Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to episode 18 of the podcast. Our guest today is Ashanti Branch. As a young man setting his sights on getting wealthy, he got an engineering degree from Cal Poly. After a few years working as a civil engineer and feeling a lack of fulfillment, he got an opportunity to tutor young boys that changed his fate. He went back to school, got his teaching credential, and set out to change the lives of young people. He then found a nonprofit in the Bay Area called Ever Forward, where they provide mentorship to youth, utilize the idea of masks as a mean for understanding oneself. He shows us how the masks we wear can protect us, but also can hinder our personal growth and understanding of our emotions. He appeared in a documentary called The Masks You Live In, about young men as they struggle to stay true to themselves as they grapple with the narrow definition of masculinity. He has given 2 TED Talks, is the host of the Taking Off the Mask podcast, and has impacted countless lives and continues to serve his community every day. Be sure to check out all the links in the description to learn more about his life and work. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much, Ashanti, for joining us today. Brennan and I have been looking forward to this conversation, and there's just so much here. So we really appreciate you taking this time.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So we like to get started just by having you explain or tell your story a little bit about how you got into this work, maybe some experiences that led up to this time in your life and some of the different work that you do today.
Yeah. So Ever Forward is a youth development mentoring program that I started in 2004. I was a first-year teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be rich. And teaching called me. And so when I decided that I was going to dedicate my life to that at that season of my life, I was like, how's it going to work? Financially, it was not, didn't feel very positive financially, but the work every day, getting up, like those students were a part of the mission of the work, So, I grew up in Oakland, California. I was raised by a single mother. My mom actually became a teacher. I didn't know she was a teacher until I was like 14 years old. I think I probably knew she was a teacher, but I mean, what do I care, right? I mean, just you leave in the morning, you come back.
Your mom goes to work. Yeah, exactly.
Goes away. And the reason I found out was because I wanted to get in this program. Like, we were poor. We grew up poor. I mean, I remember us being on welfare for a part of my life. Not very positive a lot of times, like living in really rough places. We kind of, when the rent got cheaper, we moved to another place, and the place got a little more dangerous or a little bit more, for a kid's perspective. But I remember trying to go in this program called Upward Bound. And what Upward Bound does is helps first generation college students get to college. It helps them with classes and resources and skills to like get ready for college. And so I heard about this program. I said, I'm going to college because I want to be rich. And I went to turn this application in, turned it in the very next day. And the lady called me out of class. I was like, yeah, I'm about to go to college. She invited me to I came into her classroom where all the stuff was. She sat down at the table and she said, Ashanti, you have a very amazing application here. I said, thank you. I've been working hard. I want to go to college. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's up? I didn't say it like that. I was like, yes, yes, ma'am. Right. But she was like, but we have a small problem. And I'm like, no, there's no problem. I want to be rich. Your program will help me get to college. College is where I can get rich. Like, what's the problem? It's like, well, this program is for first generation college students. And I'm like, yeah. We're poor. Like, that's me. She's like, but your mom filled out this part here, and she says your mom's a teacher. And I'm like, hey, what that mean? She's like, well, that means your mom had to go to college. And I'm like, wait a minute. You mean my mom went to college for us to be this broke? I mean, she paid for an education, and I got holes in my shoes. I remember being really irritated, like that idea that, because she went to college, it didn't mean that our lifestyle was, not the lifestyle I would have dreamed of or chosen, right? And I realized that it was like a couple of things happened that day. Ashanti Branch will never, ever be a teacher. I was clear about that. That was one. And two, I need to have a talk with my mom about her career choices. Those are the two things that I was clear about going to happen that day. And after that, I was like, well, Ashanti won't ever be a teacher. So I just tried to figure out other ways get the skills I needed to do to get to college. And so I was clear early on that I was never going to be a teacher. So imagine the shock when I'm like, this calling for me to become a teacher is plaguing my brain. And so I was like, well, let's do something different. And so anyway, when I finally accepted the calling, I went back to school, became a teacher. And that first year teaching, I was like doing a horrible job. Like I knew the math. I love math. First of all, I've designed big buildings. I'm an engineer by trade, but I'm not reaching a lot of these students who are really smart, who I connect with. Like I think that I could tell they're smart, but they're pretending in class like they're not smart. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like you're so brilliant. Why are you goofing off in my class? Like, man, how about you goof off in one of these classes who these teachers don't like you? Because I love you and I'm only here for you. I ain't here for this check. And every time a student would say something like, man, you only here for this check. I'm like, you want some proof? So I'll go to my drawer. I had them all in the same drawer. Sorry about that. I went to the same drawer. I already knew where I kept my engineering check stub and my teaching check stub. And I'm like, here, take a look. I ain't gonna hide. Tell me which one you here for. Because I'm clear that stub doesn't even seem like it should be legal. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They're like, wait, you used to make this much money? What are you doing here? I'm like, because I think you all have you need somebody here who wants to help you get there too, right? And I think that it was a journey of like making that decision, because I knew that if no one, like there's nothing that's gonna invite people to come back to teach. You're not gonna do it financially. Mm-hmm. There's no enticement in education. There's no brilliant person making a lot of money right now who's going to leave that to come teach because it's going to be a financially good idea. Yeah. It's actually a pretty stupid idea if you want to think about it on a financial scale of goals in life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But for the heart and for the purpose and for the passion, the sad part is education makes you choose. You can't choose having, if you work at a private school, you can make really good money. If you work at one of the independent schools, you can make really good money. And I've seen that and I've had that experience. So I know that that's possible. But for the community that I really felt like I want to be serving, they're not going to pay you well. So I'm talking about money in one way because I don't think money is the measure of success, but I think money can help you fund the research. All right. Mm-hmm. It can fund the research of happiness. Right. I don't think it buys happiness, but it when you don't have it, it's kind of like oxygen. It's kind of hard to breathe, Mm-hmm. But that's been my journey. And so became a teacher, like fully committed, started Ever Forward that first year teaching. It was a nonprofit. It wasn't a nonprofit that time because mind you, I just became a teacher. If you tell me like, hey, it looks like you're starting a nonprofit, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why would I do that? Whoever wants to start a nonprofit, that just sounds ridiculous to do. But now I run a nonprofit. So I'm telling you, all the thing I'm telling you right now is like a journey of, I look back, I'm like, how did this happen? There was no one who could have set me up for that plan. Like you wouldn't set somebody up for that plan. You're going to become an engineer, make a whole lot of money. Then you're going to become a teacher. Then you're going to start running a nonprofit. So you're like a hunter. I'm like hunting and gathering money every month to make sure I can pay the bills, right? Like it doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but it makes sense as I think about why, and it had to happen. Like, it had to happen the other way around, I don't know that I could have started off as a teacher and then somehow become an engineer later, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. But going the way I've gone, I'm clear about the purpose. And so anyway, I don't know how long you want the story to go, but that's the journey. I'll just say the last part I'll say is, Ever Forward started in 2004. I taught for 10 years. I was an administrator for 3. One of my first years as administrator, I was back at my old high school, and we were featured in a documentary called The Mask You Live In. And that documentary was about masculinity and how this hyper masculine narrative of being a man really hurts our boys. And that documentary really opened the door for our work to grow in a big way, because we got to, we created this activity, this campaign about masks. And that is our signature work. A workshop called Taking Off the Mask, this mask movement. We've collected over 50,000 masks from more than 25 countries. People were making these masks. And the mask is, 2 years ago when I said mask, people would get it. It's a metaphor for what we let people see about us. Now when I say mask, people are like, is this political? Are you trying to talk some political talk, right? Because everyone's thinking about these masks that cover our face, right? For this protection. And so it's a whole nother world in our experience. I'm looking for a mask here. Like if I show you a mask, from like 2 years ago compared to a mask today, it's the difference, because like 2 years ago, if I had some student draw a mask, like, let me see if we can see this. They would draw a mask like that. Okay. It would be a mask. It'd be some kind of image of a face. Now, when we ask people to draw a mask, like a lot of people are drawing these.
Oh wow, yeah, they actually are drawing them.
And it's so funny too, because even in your TED Talk from the one you did it 4 years ago, you mentioned all these different types of medical masks, and that was 4 years ago. And I was, listening back to it today, I'm like, wow, this is so funny. He probably had like no clue that this timing was going to work out. We were going to be talking about masks, and masks were going to be so present in such a different way at the same time.
Yeah, Oakland was on fire. It was 2018.
Yeah,
there was fire. Well, not Oakland. It was in the Napa. It was fires all over California. And the smoke was like, well, it was ugly. It was ugly. Yeah. And it was everyone in the audience. I was on the stage, and everyone in the audience was it was one of those things where you just like, oh my, right? And then now, right? So yeah. So that's how the journey has grown. And I'll stop there, because I can, you tell me whatever more you want to know, but I'm really juiced. I'm really excited about this campaign. I think what we've been able to see, I mean, I kind of had you looking at the pictures, but the words that these masks are saying on them is why I do the work. Mm-hmm. We have a big goal of collecting 1 million masks. That's pretty aspirational. And as I was saying, to you earlier, I said, look, the campaign used to be called 100,000 Mask Challenge, and we just elevated the campaign to 1 million. And it's not about necessarily the number 1 million. It's more like, it gives us a bigger goal to go after. But every person who creates that mask, who recognizes, here's a part of myself that I gladly let people see. This is the front. And here are the stuff about myself I don't get to talk about. Here's the behind the mask. And then when they recognize that they're not the only ones, that like there's people in their class, there's people probably in their family, there's probably people they've been going to school with for years. And they recognize, man, you're going through, wait, what? How are you going through that? You look so cool. Like, you got the nicest shoes. You can live in the fanciest place. Like, you're always smiling, right? Because the outside usually causes us to make the judgment about what somebody's about and what they're, what's real for them. But we know that if you got good masks and you're aware of it, then you recognize that probably other people do too. And therefore, it causes us an opportunity to decide how much more do we willing to let people see us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are like several pieces here that I like really want to ask about. And I think I want to kind of bring it back to start at the beginning so that we can keep this somewhat in a linear process. Yeah. I'm curious more about this calling that you felt, like being in this engineering job, being financially stable, achieving like this ideal of success that it sounds like you held, and the goal that you wanted to accomplish. Like, what was that calling? What did you feel to really turn back?
I think it was like, okay, so once I came home, I paid off all my loans, so I'm debt free. I go move to a fancy city in the Bay Area. Nice, right across the street from the grocery store. I leave my door unlocked. It's like fancy. I'm just like, all right, I got that. I got the nice place. I didn't really have a fancy car. I'm not really into that. Okay, I don't need that. I get paid every 2 weeks. Nice check. I can go out every weekend. I can go to movies. I can pay the rent. Okay. What else? I go on a vacation here. I go here. All right, there got to be more to this. There got to be more. I mean, I grew up poor, so I thought that having a lot of money makes you happy ever. I thought I was working for happy ever after. So once you start getting to the place where you got everything taken care of, you're not stressing about money. Like, money was a big stress growing up. So when that part goes away, I got a good job. What else is there? What am I missing? Why am I not feeling happy ever after? It's supposed to be the dream, right? But I'm happy, starting around Friday around 5 p.m. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then Sunday around 7 p.m. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta start getting ready for tomorrow, right? And then I'm living for happy hours. I think it was something in me, maybe seeds had been planted a long time ago. And I couldn't even tell you, I'm still kind of searching what all those seeds were, but teachers changed my life. That Miss BP, my middle school English teacher, and I hated English, but I liked Miss BP. You know what I mean? Like seeds were planted early where people saw more in me than I saw in myself. And you couldn't have told me that I was going to be a teacher. I remember the first time somebody in college. So here's what happened. In Cal Poly, I went to Cal Poly, students would come from high schools around wherever, all over California doing tours. And sometimes they would need a tour guide because, to get an official tour, you got to go through all this paperwork and whatever. And sometimes they would just come to the multicultural center and they'd be like, hey, anybody available for a tour? And I'd be like, I'll do it. I mean, I could have just got there from class, tired, I'll do it. I'm always giving tours, right? So one day I'm in there taking a nap. I'm like taking a nap and I hear somebody say, they got a tour. Anybody doing? I said, hey, I'll do it. And I remember getting up. I remember that, but somebody in the room was like, man, Ashanti, you should be a teacher. You're doing all these tours. And I felt insulted. Like I felt insulted that somebody would think that I, an engineer, should be a teacher. Teachers don't make money. I knew teachers. My mom was a teacher, so I knew that that's not a profession that anybody's like, yay, teachers, right? So I remember, like, even when people try to plant a seed in me early, I was like, you keep that stuff somewhere else. Keep that limited thinking somewhere else. That's just how I saw it. I didn't see it as a worthy profession. I knew teachers had helped me a lot, but I didn't. So I think that what happened was, I think it was just like, okay, now I got the job and I got some money. I'm not rich by any means. But I'm much happier than I had ever been in a financial way. I got money in the bank. I paid all the bills and I can still go to the movies and still do stuff. Like that's never was my reality. So when I went from there to there, you're like, hey, I made it in some ways, but why am I not feeling that? Funny story. I have this big screen TV that was from the 1998 big screen, right? Like it's a big tube, it's like it's flat, but it's a big box, like you buy that TV and then you're like, this is going to be amazing. I had the Mike Tyson fight at my house. I remember once and I'm like, okay, I'm doing all these really cool things. And I'm no more happier than when I was in college, struggling as a college student, making beans and rice. Like, I'm like, I thought that this was going to make me feel. I thought the feeling, when you ask me what the feeling is really hard to say because I thought that what I was searching for was a new feeling that would feel even more amazing. But I think if you're a miserable person, money doesn't make you less miserable. You just become a miserable person with money, right? If you're an evil person, like, I think you heard, a lot of these famous people say, money just exposes what you already really are. So if you're not happy, you're not going to be happy. There's no amount of money, so, but I don't think you can tell somebody that who doesn't know it, who hasn't experienced it. If you couldn't have told me that money wasn't going to make me happy because I knew what the other side was. So anyways, I don't know. I can only say that I was in a search for like, So okay, let me tell you. Okay, actually, I can tell you this answer. Actually, that's now that I'm thinking about it. When I started tutoring at this program, I remember. Wait a minute. Okay, so a buddy of mine, I'm engineering, right? A buddy of mine calls me and says, "Hey, I need a math tutor for Saturday mornings for this program." Upward Bound at this college called Mills College. He says, "I need you to tutor." I said, "When?" He said, "Saturday mornings." I was like, I don't even see Saturday morning. I don't even know what Saturday morning looks like. I don't wake up till Saturday at least noon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want me to be somewhere at 8:00 on Saturday? It's not gonna happen. Like my happiness in life, it starts on Friday at 5. I gotta, I'm by the time I get to 12 a.m., I'm just getting started, And when I realized, so he said, look, I need somebody, give me 2 months. I'll find somebody else. And I'm like, man, you better find somebody else, because I'm in my mind, I'm sacrificing where happiness is really coming from. It's on my thoughts, right? So I go to this first session, tutoring at this program. Kids coming in, I'm doing the math. It's algebra 2 trig. I'm tutoring. Some needs help with this. Some need help with this. This one kid comes in late. He's like was it? He's like Norm from Cheers, right? When he comes in, everybody starts saying, "Hey, what's up, Damon? Damon!" And then Damon has to greet everybody. You know, it's like an old school party, right? Damon got to go say hello to everybody, high five, hugging everybody. And I'm looking at this kid. And I'm like, no, he didn't just walk in here a half hour late, and now he's got to go hug everybody. Like I'm getting a little irritated, right? And so I'm like, "Come here." I said, "How you doing? What's your name?" This is my first day. I'm like, he's like, "Oh, I'm Damon. Damon." I said, "Hey, Damon, how you doing?" I said, "Why are you late?" "Oh, it was late night, I'm like, you mean I sacrifice my Friday night and you don't even sacrifice your Friday night? I was feeling a little, you can tell I was taking it personal, right? And I said, where's your books? Where's your stuff? "Oh, I was just borrowing one of my friends." I'm like, "Oh, so wait a minute, you first?" So then I remember having this conversation with him. I don't remember all the words. I remember just a piece of elements. I said, "Find a seat, sit down." But in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm still like, I work in construction, right? So I'm like, I want to like say something really inappropriate, but I know I can't, right? It's my first day. I don't want to. So I'm like, sit down, right? Like that, like sit down. Like, and I remember driving home back to my fancy place, and I was like, wait till next week. I dare him to show up late. In my mind, I'm strategizing already on what I'm plotting to do with this one student who is like, I've never seen him before in my life, but now I have a plan on how I'm going to like interrupt his like laissez-faire attitude when he shows up to my class late. The fact that I'm sacrificing time out of my fun life. And I remember like, what are you doing, Ashanti? You're only going to be there 2 months. And I remember just what happens over those 2 months. It turned into like 2 years. And it was like the fire began to like the fire underneath the surface. You couldn't even see the embers started to like catch. And I'm like, why are you so worried about these kids? Like, you got an engineering job. You don't got time for this. And it became the thing that was more important to me. And I think that's actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because it took me a minute to like catch on to what that actually was. It was that moment, those moments that began to like, yeah, the engineering thing, I could keep doing it. And it was hard because it wasn't an easy decision. It's not easy to be like, I grew up poor, I'm now making money, and to be like, I'm going to go and choose some kind of career that's going to not let me live the lifestyle that I got to go pay to go back to school again, to get a job that I'm going to bear. I'm still paying off my loans. I went back to college in 2002, 2003. And then that was a credential. And then 2003-04 was my master's. I am still today. I paid off my engineering loans in less than 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. I'm still paying these ridiculous loans that I got an education degree for 20 plus years later. It's about to be 20 years next year.
Wow.
Makes no sense. It's not logical. But here's what I'm clear about every day. Like, even though I mentioned that and I'm very passionate about the fact that I'm not happy about that, I'm clear that the work I do every day is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I made that sacrifice I made. It's that's what I was about to say. It's been worth it. Some moments it's not worth it. Some moments I'm like, I quit. I'm going back to making money. Right. But here I am 20 years later, 17 years building ever forward. I'm still here. So
it's so cool that, I think that, as you alluded to, the idea of like doing something that makes you happy, right, is really like a mission and a journey of finding something that you can, invest your time into that's bigger than just you, right? And you got roped into tutoring and found these kids, and they hooked you, and you like you said, that seed was planted, and all of a sudden you had an emotional investment in something, and it was bigger than you, and it's an unbelievable mission. And I think a very similar mission to why a lot of people get into teaching. And I think too, just, as I'm sitting here thinking about your story, I think it's so interesting how you get into teaching from this engineering field. And while you're in the teaching role, you're in my opinion, as an outward, observer, your engineering mind probably came into play as you start to like develop this concept of whatever Ford was going to be, right? Like engineering, you're solving root problems, you're creating frameworks to solve complex solutions. And what more complex solution than what you do at Ever Forward? And had you not become a teacher and seen that, there's a debate that you may not have been able to make the impact had you not gone through the exact path that you went through. So it's really cool to see how like all of these puzzle pieces in your story really fit together so nice.
Yeah. I think when you talked about that is actually really important when I talk to students, right? Because I tell them, I want to help you have the career that you choose of, right? Teaching called me. I say that teaching called me.
Mm-hmm.
I never wrote in any of my journals growing up, I want to be a teacher. Like, you know what I'm saying? Even when the teaching was calling me, I was like, how can I not go to teaching, right? How can I fulfill this thing and not go have to be a teacher? And so what I tell students in that is like, what kind of career do you want? Like, I can help a student become an engineer. I not help them become it. I can help them. I know the path. You're going to work really hard on your math, science skills or you want to be a doctor, lawyer, scientist. Like, what are the things you want to do? It's going to take a lot of hard work. I think getting to college anyway is hard, but I think like I can help students in these different paths. And I can also say that I've seen it. I've experienced it, right? I've experienced the education side, the corporate side, and now the nonprofit side, right? So even that, and I think I went from like engineering these big buildings to like, how do you help people engineer their goals and their minds and their hearts, right?
Yeah.
How do you engineer that, in a way that's really meaningful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is fascinating. I wanted a little bit of motivation this morning to start my day. And so I turned on a Tim Ferriss podcast where he was interviewing Tony Robbins. And I was like, all right, here we go. Like, let's see what he's going to say. And he hit on this idea of achievement versus fulfillment. Like, a lot of people want to achieve, they want success, but they don't feel fulfilled in their lives. And this is like, man, like such a good example of like, you did all these great things and you're like, I still think maybe something's missing a little bit. Like, you went back, you were willing to reset. Like, I'm curious about like, what was the kind of pushback, or did you experience pushback in making that transition from going to engineer to a teacher?
I don't think there's any pushback. My mom was like, are you sure? Like, when I told her about it, she was like, you ain't going to be going to Ibiza and traveling the world like you used to, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you'd be lucky to have a little bit to go to LA or so, or something like that. And I was like, so it's calling me, right? I think my friends were kind of shocked. Like, some of them were like, dude, why don't you just, they had all kind of solutions. Why don't you just like, you make a whole lot of make a whole lot of money engineering. Then you can go teach like when you retire, retire early. Cause originally I thought I was going to make enough money to retire at 45. That was my strategy. Retire at 45, then just live my life. I had listened to a lot of Tony Robbins growing up and a lot of Les Brown. And I'm like, hey, you can do it. Like, let's go. Like, work hard, make a lot of money, then you can live the life. And something in the moment was like, I didn't strategize a lot about how I was going to do this. Like, if I had thought about it in retrospect, I would have saved a lot more money up front. I would have planned a different level of, I wouldn't have been having so much fun with the money I was making. I would have been like, if I had planned it, it wasn't planned. It was planned because I ran from it for 2 years, and I was just like, and finally it was like, you're coming, brother. You're coming, let's go. And so I didn't go in like, let me strategize 2 years, save a bunch of money. I was still going to every bachelor party, every wedding, everything. I was enjoying it. And then I realized, I probably should have saved some more money. I probably should have. Oh, I didn't strategize because, I didn't do the calculation for how much the income was going to change. But I think when you say, what did you call it? You call it, what were the two words you used for that Tony Robbins talked about?
Achievement versus fulfillment.
Achievement versus fulfillment. Like I was achieving, I was high achieving, but I didn't get the full. And I think it was the full. And here's a dangerous part about that phrasing, right? Because not dangerous, but it like makes me think, because I was feeling fulfilled financially.
Mm.
So imagine how all the parts of our life, there's, finances, family, fun, fitness. There's all kind of parts of my life that I was not fulfilled, right? Like, I was fulfilled in financial. I was fulfilled in fun, but I wasn't fulfilled in purpose. I wasn't fulfilled in like a bigger meaning to life than just me and the weekend, So it gets tricky, right? Because then you say, well, I'm happy in these areas. Let me just be satisfied. And I think luckily, at that time I had no kids, I had no family, no mortgage. I could make a choice that was going to change my life a lot, but I didn't without hurting myself in a way, So it was that. I think it would have been an easier call if I was miserable at work, right? If I was miserable, if it was just like horrible, right? But it wasn't. It was actually, I enjoyed it and I was good at it, right? It was one thing to be not enjoying it, but another thing to be good at it. But there was something missing in there, So I like that. I like that, and I listened to a lot of him growing up, and so I think maybe those seeds were also planted. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with this one here? What incredible life! I think somebody said. There's some quote. What are you going to do with this life, right? Mm-hmm. And I saw the other side, and I was like, oh, I'm still missing something. And so now I think about it like this: if you could be more fulfilled, but not having as much money as you wanted to have, but still being able to live every day like it's meaningful. I feel like right now, and I'm on this other level of the journey right now, because now I taught for 10 years. I was an administrator for 13 years in education. Now I run this nonprofit for the last 5 years since 2016. And now I'm like, okay, Ashanti, okay. And what are you going to do for you? Right. Because I've been working, on this education thing since 2002, right? That's 20 years. Like, what are you going to do for you now? What are you going to do for you? And so now I'm having those questions with myself and mentors, and like, what does it mean to do something for me? Like write my book, right? Like I talk about it a lot, probably more than I'm writing. I talk about writing the book more than I'm writing the book, right? And why don't I write it? Well, I don't make enough time. Why? Because I'm working on the other stuff. And so really starting to say, okay, is it worth it? If it's worth it, then you're going to have to share. You're going to share your time in the day with your own goals, which I have not ever forward. It's kind of been a goal of mine building this, but it's not, I don't call it a personal goal. It's my vision to help change the world goal, right? It's an aspirational goal to make lives and community better for people who are getting raised right now, who are growing up now. And for my personal goal, I want to do this project, and it's easier to just keep doing the work that I feel like I'm really good at. I don't think I'm a good writer, so it's easy to be like, well, I'll keep doing the stuff that I know that I'm really good at, right? And it's another level of fulfillment. Like, I don't think I'll be satisfied if I don't write it. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost 100% sure I would not be satisfied. So, but I'm doing everything right now that I feel good about, and I'm working hard, and I love the work I do. So it's another one of those shifts in my life. Is like, so what am I going to sacrifice? Something has to give. I only have 24 hours in a day, right? Mm-hmm. And as much as I try and not sleep any of them, you got to do that too. So I'm in that new phase of finding the next level of fulfillment that's going to take me through this next phase of my life. So yeah, it's a journey. I'm glad. I'm gonna write those 2 words down you just said so I can put them on my wall. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, now going back kind of to your first year teaching, you start the Ever Forward Club. Yeah. I'm curious about the thought process and the origins of starting this thing that's like really expanded so much now.
And was it always like, is it now in the form of the vision you originally had, or has it made some massive changes as you've kind of gone through all the phases of developing it as a program to what it is?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I thought it would be much bigger by now. I thought by now I would have like 100 employees. We would be in every, 25 states around the country. I had some big aspirational goals, right? So I'm a first year teacher. This program is kicking off, or let's say before the program, I'm doing a really bad job at teaching. Like, I'm doing a bad job. Like, and the reason I call myself doing a bad job, I got really smart young men in my classes who are failing. Like, they're smart. I can tell they're smart. They are not willing to let other people see they're smart. But because I used to know how to be one of those kids who was smart but didn't have to act it, I was noticing something was going on. And what I realized after they started talking about it, they were like, well, Smart's not cool. I'm not going to be no nerd, no geek, no teacher's pet, because in my community, smart doesn't equal cool. You're cool if you're an athlete. You got a six pack. You got a mustache at 15 years old, right? You got a car. You get girls. You got money. Like all the status stuff was what's cool. You're not cool because you got an A on some test. People actually make fun of you. They actually talk bad about you. And it wasn't until we started talking about those conversations where they had this belief that they couldn't be cool and smart, then they had to act another way. So what I began to do with them is we're gonna find a way so you can be both. But first I had to figure out how to get them to a meeting because in class, if I try and tell them how smart they are, a student would rather get kicked out of class than for you to tell them how smart they are in front of everybody at the school I worked at. Because if smart's not cool and you want to be cool, when somebody says something like that, you're going to be like, what you talking about? And then they need to like prove that how they're not so smart, because if you're trying to keep your cool points, you can't let somebody think that you're a genius. You know what I'm saying? So you better be tough and like, and I remember having so many arguments with students over nothingness. As I look back and as I watch it happen, I'm like, oh, they're protecting their image. Mm. Like they would do good on a project. You know, we worked in teams. So they were doing good on a project. I'm like, everybody, I want to give a shout out to this team right here. And then the dudes, the two students who were like doing amazing. As soon as I said something out loud, they all of a sudden now they're disinterested. They're like, and then they start goofing off and they almost get goof off enough to get kicked out of class because now their friends in class think they're at the smart table. And now you've basically put yourself mark on yourself. It's almost unimaginable to happen, but it's so real. And so what ended up happening is I just began to recognize that I can't do it in class. I can't uplift them in class in front of everybody. I can't point out how brilliant they are in front of everybody because they're so afraid of it that they'll fight me as a fan of them. And I remember just saying, look, okay, I'm gonna invite some young men to lunch. I invited them to lunch. I said, look, I'll buy you lunch once a week. I mean, it's my first year teaching. I still had some engineering money left. So I'm going to buy you lunch once a week. In exchange for lunch, I want you to teach me how to be a better teacher. Like, what am I doing wrong? And those lunch meetings is what created the Ever Forward Club.
What were some of those early pieces of feedback you got?
I'm not going to be no nerd.
All those
things. Yeah. I'm not going to be carrying no big old backpack. What I look like sitting here being all goofy buddy with teachers. I ain't got time for that because if everybody thinks it's not cool, then it's definitely not cool. So they had their definitions by the peers who said, here's what was cool. So all those lessons I learned was them saying it. It was kind of like, as I started saying it ahead of time, it was because I remembered it subconsciously because I used to do it, right? I mean, I was hanging around with some knuckleheads in high school, but I was doing my work. I went home. I did my work. I didn't miss homework. Never. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I get a test back, I had to hide the test in my backpack. People be like, dude, Branch, what'd you get? I'm like, man, I didn't even get my test back. They're like, what? What do you mean you didn't get your test back? I'll tell some dumb lies. I mean, they watch teacher walk by and hand me the test. I shoved that thing in the backpack. I'm like, I ain't get no test. Man, I'll bug her later after school, or I'll tell the teacher, don't give me my test back in class. So I used to try like little tricks to keep that spotlight off of me because it wasn't a positive spotlight usually, right? It was more of a, you think you're smart?
Do you think in a way it like went against, like to use the mask analogy again, it went against the mask that was on the outside of what they were trying to portray in class? So you were almost like demasking them in a sense in front of everybody.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. It was almost like when we do this work, you have the choice of what you share on the outside. And if you're trying to prove to people that you ain't super smart, no one's going to know because you can keep it out. You can keep it hidden if you're good at it, if you need to keep it hidden. And I remember just really like one young man coming to my class. In those days, you're exactly right. It was almost like, here, take this mask off. You don't need it. And they were like, dude. And I had students who like almost want to fight me. Like fight physically. Like this is like, it's a serious thing because you're exposing me in front of all these people in a way that I don't want, even though deep down. So if I was to talk to students one-on-one in my office or whatever, it would be really beautiful and clear. They knew they could tell that I cared, and I could see past their stuff. Right? We didn't talk about masks back then in a really a context that way, but it's exactly right. I really like the way you said that, and I didn't make that connection to it right now, but I think exactly what I was doing unconsciously.
Right, of course,
unconsciously, right? Thinking that I'm trying to help them, but when we started meeting those lunch meetings, like they recognized that each other was feeling the same stuff, and so then they began to support each other. I'm like, we would do I would do academic matchmaking, right? Okay, when check in, somebody's struggling in algebra or geometry, and who's taking geometry? Okay, who's doing pretty good in geometry? Okay, can you call him tonight and get him some help? Like that's what I was doing during the meetings. Our meetings were short; they were like 40 minutes. It was like lunchtime. So that's why I got food in, because they don't have to miss food, and they get better food than the cafeteria. So it was almost like, come to the meeting. I don't care if you come for food, but you're gonna get something else out of it, right? And that's how it all began. But yeah, began the space where I could tell them how smart they were and how brilliant they were. And then I think what happens, I sometimes wonder if it's they were afraid to look smart, or they were afraid of what happens if you look dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't try, you can just be like, I'm failing, but I don't care.
Yeah.
But if you try and you don't pass,
then you could be labeled as dumb.
Then you can be labeled as dumb, as not smart, as idiot, as whatever. Right now, mm-hmm. I wondered how much. But when I saw several young men who finally started at least giving their best, like let's say giving their best and like getting good grades, and then like leaving the test on the table, like while they do their other work, just like. I don't say nothing. I don't give no extra props. I almost give what students used to see around campus is they said, Branch, why you so hard on them? Because I sometimes was harder on them than other students. I think subconsciously as a way to like, maybe even just like let them know first I care. That's one way of me. I mean, it's just my style is a little bit, I'm loud, I'm big, I'm maybe aggressive or whatever, but more so not even trying to be, but more like if a student was walking down the hall with a friend and one isn't ever forward and one is not, the student who's never forward is going to get it. Like, where's your pass? Oh, I don't have no, wait. What you mean you don't have no pass? Now, I've had students who are in the hallway with other friends and I'll walk up. I ignore all the other ones. Like I see them, but this is my attention right here. Why are you not in class? What are you doing? And some kids be like, man, you gonna let him talk to you like that? You gonna let him talk to you like that? And I'm like, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to him. So mind your business, right? And then the other dude will be like, oh, that's Branch. Don't worry, that's Branch. And I'm like, get over here, let's go. And I walk them to class. And their friends are looking like, who's that dude? Who's that dude just walked him out of here, right? Because it was like this thing where I wanted them to know that you have, like, I'm making an investment in you, not just for lunch, but just care. And therefore, I'm not willing to let you give half in your best. And if you're not in class when you're supposed to be in class, then you're not giving your best. And that means that if I'm going to be the bad guy, I'll be the bad guy. And I'll be the bad guy to all the other students. And some students will be like, who are you? What goes on in there? Right? Once they start figuring out what's going on, I'm like, you want to come in? And they'd be like, I don't know who's in there. I said, well, if you need to know who's in there, you don't need to be in there. If you're curious and you want to be a part of this, right? Like you should come check it out. You're more than welcome. And sometimes they would come and they realize, oh, people hold people accountable in here. You getting people are checking up on you and they're expecting you to do things. For some people, that's really hard to do. But for me, it was exactly what needs to happen, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the words I was throwing around with Nick a lot, like kind of in preparation for having our conversation, was the idea of identity. And I think what you just touched on for me, what really connected with me was you were helping these kids shoot for the highest form of improvement within their own identity by holding them to a standard they did not yet hold themselves. So, which I think is like, so powerful for a lot of young people who are really having, especially in a school which is just covered in masks, where you're kind of putting out an identity that you want everybody to see, but it's not the ideal highest form of yourself that you're capable of. So in a lot of ways, you were helping a lot of people shape their identity by showing them like, why are you not in class? Like you're better than that. You should be holding yourself to that highest standard. Go do that. Like, be better. You know what I mean? And I think that's, that I would say that the teachers that I really connected with in high school too, they had a dose of that in them. I really appreciated when somebody saw way more in me than I was willing to like put my mask aside for, and like maybe look at what was on that inside of that mask and see where I could go. I think those are some of the most impactful moments for young people, because you're still just a baby in the world, how do you know how to navigate where you are? So I think that's, the shaping of identity thing is really where I feel like, especially just like going through your website and listening to your talk, you got 2 great TED Talks. And I think listening to all of that, there's a huge identity piece that is a part of this, helping people see that there's more for them out there than they realize, and helping them get the motivation to go get it,
Yeah.
That's huge.
And imagine maybe you can think about yourself. Like, if you've ever had a conversation with a friend, somebody you knew for a long time that then went to another level, right? Whether they actually told you or you checked in on them and they went deeper. It's kind of like the same thing, right? It's kind of like what happens, what happens in that space between like, here's what I'm willing to let people know, here's what I think they should know. And then here's when it really hits the fan. And it could have been like they hit a breaking point where it was coming out. It was like oozing out, like they need some help. Somebody's going through it. But what if you didn't know people could handle it? What if you didn't know people would stay? What if you didn't know that when you told them what you were going through, they wouldn't laugh at you and walk away, right? And I think that's what causes more people to keep it behind the mask. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't handle this. You can't handle knowing that I'm struggling. You can't handle knowing that I sleep on the floor every night. You can't handle knowing that there's abuse. You can't handle knowing that I've done some things I'm not proud of. And so a mentor maybe 6 months ago asked me a question that I ask the young people a lot now. He said, Ashanti, I heard this quote, but then I heard him say it to me directly. He said, tell me a place that you are fully known. Let me see. I like deep questions, but I didn't like this question, right? I'm like, fully known. Where am I fully known? Well, there's not too many places that I'm fully known. And he said, well, it's probably pretty hard to be fully loved unless you're fully known. I think I don't want to be in this conversation anymore. You know what I mean? Like, so where are you fully loved? And is it possible to be fully loved unless you're fully known? If people only love you for what they know about you, but they only know 50% of you, then what are they loving? They're loving the 50% you let them see. If they know 60% of you, then they love the 60% that you let them see. So if we craft who we want people to love, who we think they can love, who they think they can respect, care about, whatever word you want to put in that place, then where do we get to be more of our real selves? And I think that's what we try and do with the young men. It's like, look, in this space, all of it is welcome. It's not going to always look pretty. If you think that it's going to always look pretty, then you're looking for a type of reality and a type of life that says, well, all that exists in my life are positive emotions and positive feelings. But there's all kinds of feelings and emotions. There's pleasant feelings and emotions, and there's negative ones. If you're trying to say, I should be happy all the time, you're missing a part of the human experience.
Right.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of people sometimes. I think they get sucked into like, I'm feeling sad, therefore something's wrong with me. No, sad is part of the human experience. It's what you do with the sadness. It's where you let it land. It's, do you process it or do you ignore it? Do you stuff it? Do you repress it? Like, that's when it becomes dangerous. That's when it becomes your shadow, where you're trying to make sure everyone loves you and loves you. Well, I mean, that would be great if everyone loves you and everyone was loves you all the time, all of you. Well, sometimes you may be a jerk, Sometimes you may be grumpy, but sometimes you may be irrational, right? Like, how do we make sure we give people and young people a space to say, there's more to me than just this guy who smiles all the time, and to be okay with that? Because if I'm not willing to be okay with that, then I'm probably going to disappoint myself even, because I'm trying to like fit in a box that doesn't even exist. It doesn't even first exist, and I don't fit in it, and that's what we try and do with them.
Yeah, it's like the idea of people don't not like you, they just don't yet know you. Yeah. Right. And it's like, I think, there's a form of that Nick and I were having a conversation about recently. So Nick was just about to say something, so I'll let him jump in.
Oh, no, I just think this piece about like, I feel like those young boys could just really feel your intent. Like it didn't feel safe to take off the mask, like you said before, but they could really feel your intent in those spaces. And they were like, okay, maybe this guy like does really care. Like I can be vulnerable. And you like self-disclosing some of your experience to them and like showing them the checks, I think is such a huge part of that process too. And it's, it's just beautiful to hear. Cause I mean, it's something that I think about a lot in the field of like clinical psychology and doing that kind of work. You provided that like secure, stable base for a lot of these boys to open up. And yeah, hopefully there can be more spaces like that continue to grow.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I think maybe, I don't know, in psychology, from what I see on TV or what I've read, when you were the client, you don't talk. I mean, what I heard, I don't really know yet, is that you don't talk a lot of your personal stuff, right? You keep it, the psychologist or the therapist keeps it really professional, right? I'm here to help you. Don't ask me a question about my personal stuff, right? And maybe some do, right? But I was thinking in that way, like I went first. The way it worked for me is because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a degree. I'm a mentor. I'm a person who can listen, and I try and listen and talk in the ratio of my ears and mouth, or I try and listen twice as much as I talk, when I'm talking a lot today, but that's because you're asking me questions. But normally I'm the one asking all the questions. But when you get to that place where I'm like, well, look, let me tell you something. Let me tell you about me. Let me know. And I think that part is the place where students begin to recognize, okay, I actually, one of my students, alumni, just came in yesterday or Monday on the holiday. And he was, going through some stuff, right? And he runs. He'll go on these disappearing acts where he'll disappear for 6-7 months. And then he may come back and check in. And this idea that I'm not supposed to want help. I'm not supposed to want to get help. But that's, where do you get that from? Who taught you that? Who taught you that getting help is something wrong with that? Or it makes you less than a man or less than an individual sovereign being because you need help? I think we just have gotten lost in that idea what getting help means. And I think, and I'm guilty of it too, because I'm bad at asking for help. Like the relay, I'll tell this after fact because before it would have been me complaining a lot. Let me tell you what happened. The relay on Tuesday before the relay, I had about 13 hours of the 24 hours that were not yet covered. 12 hours. Like I'm talking about, like, I've been working hard on this event. Now, do I have a small staff? Yep, that's true. Do I have a small budget? Yep, that's true. Do I have all these constraints, but you know what I not doing? I wasn't asking for help. I wasn't putting out a plea to people who I knew for help. I was kind of asking, we got this event coming up, I could use some support around this. And literally the men on my men's team, because I'm on a men's team. I didn't have a men's team when I first started Ever Forward, but for the last 10 years, I am on a men's team that I go to every Tuesday night, 3 hours, right? That's the time we're together. And I was like, I need help. Like, I don't know what to do. Now, the fact that I shouldn't have waited till the, 5 days before the event to be like, I need help. But I was like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to. And so when my young men are not asking me for help and I can tell they're up against it, I offer it. And I'll say, well, when you're ready, I'm here, because I know that it's hard. It's hard. I don't not ask for help because I think I can do everything by myself. That's never my reasoning. My reasoning is I don't like to inconvenience people. I don't want to bother people. They're busy too. So I don't want to ask for help. And it always ends up, I mean, I've learned this in the last 10 years, but being on this men's team, they've always stepped up. They've always, in the ways they could step up. They couldn't do everything, but they were like, they can give you some ideas, some tips, some suggestions. And I'm learning. I mean, as an older man, in my second journey of this life, right? Like, maybe I need to start asking for help earlier. Stop waiting until like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, how about we just say part of the planning is asking for help for the people out in the community. And man, I believe that I'm going to get much better at it. It should be an easy lesson to learn, but it's not. And so I guess I'm going to keep learning it, And so that's a lesson I keep learning,
It's so interesting because like, I feel like a lot of us asking for help is saying like, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. Like you hear that's like, oh, I need some help, but never explicitly stating it until it gets to that point, right?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Been and I wish what's really beautiful when I see it in the young people is that I can see it. So when I see them giving resistance, I just name it. I say, you know what? Maybe you don't trust that I'll help you. Maybe you don't trust that I can handle it. And a lot of times my young men in my work, because they know I'm busy, they will overthink it for me. They will tell themselves, Branch is too busy, therefore, and then 6 months later, they're asking for help, but now it's in a crisis stage. And I'm like, oh, I do that too. Oh, you're not the only one who does that. I do that too. I did that to my men just last week, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. And what I've learned is one of my mentors said, Ashanti, do you like helping people? When the young men come to you and like and ask you for help, do you like helping? I'm like, yeah, of course. He said, well, let me ask you this. If you enjoy helping them, he said, why don't you think that some of us would really like helping you? What?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Like, right? Like it doesn't seem, it seems like I'm bothering you. It doesn't seem like you would enjoy helping me because the story I'm telling myself is not necessarily the facts, right? And so when I get to that place of like, what if other people enjoyed helping me like I enjoy helping these young people, right? And it started to help me realize that I don't give people the opportunity. And what I tell my young people are having to start telling me, and I'm glad to have that in my life. I didn't always have that in my life. Only had it in the last 10 years or so, but I'm glad to have that.
Yeah. And so now moving forward is kind of growing a little bit. And then the mask we live in comes into play. I guess, when did the mask really become something that you focused on, that you really named?
Yeah. And so we did that activity in the doc, and they invited us to be a part of this documentary. I've heard about documentaries before, but I didn't know fancy documentaries. So I thought they were going to come in with a little camcorder and they were going to be like recording me doing some activity with students. And I was like, okay, yeah, come on in. And they say, well, I said, you should go to the other club though. The other club, the young men are like super on top of it. They're like, they've been working together for like 3-4 years. They're like, it's a strong club. And they were like, well, where are you at? I said, well, I'm at this other school, but these young men, they don't open up. And they were like, well, we want to see where you work. I said, well, there is going to be a lot of resistance, When we do check-ins on a scale from 1 to 10, everybody in that circle is a 10. Maybe there's 1-9 over there, but they're all 10s. Now, I'm the dean. So every suspension, every referral, every incident usually comes through my office. No, you're not a 10. No. That's not 10. That's not 10 behavior. You got kicked out of 5 classes today. How are you a 10? You know what I mean? But see, in the circle, I can't tell their business. I know what's going on because I probably suspended you yesterday. But in the circle, I got to just be like another man in the circle, right? So they were like, we're going to come film where you work. And I'm like, this is going to be bad because they're going to sit there and all pretend like they're so cool. And I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And I was just thinking, I want to be meaningful for the people who are going to maybe watch this thing, but also meaningful for the young men. And I said, well, what if we don't have to talk about it? What if we don't talk about it? What if they just write it? And that's when the idea of the mask came. I said, well, and in a documentary, if you see the documentary, The Mask You Live In, I actually hand them a mask. I pre-print it, and I ask them just to write words on the front, and then things they let people see, and the things on the back they don't let people see. When they started throwing the pieces of paper at each other, you see the little snowball fight, they pick up a mask, and I say, okay, we're going to open these. Now, under my chair is like 2 other activities that I have trying to figure out, right? I'm like, if this doesn't work, we got to try something else. And all of a sudden, when they got these pieces of paper, they had a little fun hitting each other with pieces of paper, teenage men like that. I think a lot of them do. And they pick up this paper. Now this room is getting quiet because they realize their paper is in somebody else's hands, or I don't know if they know yet. I just know I'm watching it happening. I'm watching it unfolding as it's happening. And all of a sudden I'm saying, so we're going to open these papers and I want you to keep it to yourself. Okay. Open them. And then you just see like it get like super like quiet in there. And then we start going around reading the front and the back of these masks. And man, I tell you, I had never seen these young men open up. Like just to watch them in reverence and like space, like whole, like I just, all I could do, I was just speaking from my heart. It's like what it was. And what I saw in them at this school, Fremont High School in Oakland, California, I saw young men who recognized that they had been operating under these really strong, tough, cool masks. And they were all going through similar stuff: pain, sadness, anger, fear. And none of them was talking about it with anybody. Now, my office one-on-one, we could talk about it because that's what we do. Like I don't have time to waste time with like soft questions, right? You're kicked out of class. Why are you out of class? Like, dude, you're too brilliant for this. This is ridiculous. So in my office one-on-one, I know they can go there, but in front of each other, they never would. And I can't tell their business, right? So, and when it worked, I was like, oh my goodness, that worked. And then, so I started like dabbling with that little activity in different places, like just with my staff, teachers, and then a couple of other places I did it. I still was kind of figuring it out. Then I went and saw the documentary. So I remember I'm in it doing the activity. I felt that it had a really deep resonance. Documentary comes out. I've done it with a couple other teacher groups, and I've done it with some people because I've seen it work. But it wasn't until I went to Sundance and saw the documentary, and I watched the outside. I watched me, like, because I hadn't seen me. I'd only been in the place seeing it there. When I watched it from the outside, like I was blown away. Because I didn't see some of the things that were happening in the room. There was young men crying on the side, like they were tearing up, but they're too tough. So they were just like keeping they didn't let people see it, but you could see it in the video. I didn't see it from where I was sitting. And then I knew that it was about to take off. And I think that is so. We started doing this workshop all over. And one of the things that happened was originally, remember, I was printing masks. One of my interns, we went to a workshop in Burlingame in the Bay Area. He had 2 jobs: markers and masks. Got it? Markers and masks. We drive over the night before, so we don't have to try and wake up at 5 a.m. to get in the Bay Area traffic. We stay at the hotel, the conference, wake up, get ready for the workshop, going down for breakfast. I'm like, where are the markers and masks? Masks? There's no masks. I'm like, you only have markers and masks? Like, please tell me you have the masks. No masks. I'm like, okay, so I go down to the print center. Most like lots of hotels, depending on where you live, the print center's copier machine is often broken. Somebody tried to fix it, and this just. Okay, the front desk, can you print? I can print 2 copies for you. I know, I need like 80 copies. No, we can't do that. Where's the closest Kinko's copy machine? Like, sorry, you got to go like 18 miles down that way, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, no.
Literally, the activity is about masks. If I don't have masks, how are we going to do this activity? So then, a moment of brilliance. I'm like, I told my intern, I said, I need you to go find some plain blank paper. Just give me some plain blank paper. He comes back with 11 by 17 pieces of paper. I'm like, what am I going to do with 11 by 17 pieces of paper? People are going to knock each other out with these pieces of paper. But it was all we had. So we had 11 by 17 pieces of paper. We passed one out to each person, it's bigger than their lap, so they're trying to, and literally that was the first time I had people draw their own mask. And after that workshop, I mean, when they bought, you bought 11 by 17 piece of paper up, it's a ball. People were getting popped in the face. It was totally unforgettable, but that is how it happened. And when I got home that day, and I had been keeping masks because I thought something told me just keep them. I got home that day and I smoothed them all out, and the different designs that were coming out of all these different people, it was like, this is how we're going to do it from now on. Everyone's going to draw their own mask. And it was just like, yes. It was like the moment of like how the tragedy turns into not tragedy, but it was if your job is to do math and you can't do math, then that's tragedy for your work. But
right,
it turned into the biggest revelation, and so that's how it happened. That's how it took off, and then we started doing workshops all over for free, like all over, and it started working. Like we weren't counting them at that time. I was just collecting them. I was saving them because like I just felt really deeply connected to them, And then the movement, like we decided, in 2017, 2016, taking off the mass workshop. That was one of our college trips, and we said, look, we're gonna make a goal out of it. We're gonna make a goal. And originally, I wanted to go 1 million, and I let fear get in the way, and so I started with 100,000. And just this past summer, we elevated to the Million Mask movement. And so we've collected masks from all over the world, right? Like more than 25 countries. And actually a package of masks just came in because some schools are going back and teachers are doing the activity with their students. And they're finding out that, what we've seen and what we know is that there's so much more to us. There's so much more to each of us than anybody can see by looking at us, right? And even though now we're wearing these masks, these personal protection masks, we call the masks of emotional disconnection, right? That cause me to be able to be in this space and keep everything light. And there's all kinds of stuff going on, right? There's all kinds of stuff happening, right? And where do I have that place, a safe place to go and be like, I'm not gonna keep this to myself, Maybe lots of things we do keep to ourselves, but there's so many things that we could talk about, right? And so, that's how the movement they started. And then it was began to grow and blossom. And, I've seen some masks that absolutely break my heart, right? And they're anonymous. And the beauty part of that is somebody felt comfortable sharing part of their truth. And hopefully it opens up the door. And what we see in those workshops, like the ones I just showed you, these two that I showed you earlier, like this is a 15-year-old male from Tiburon. Tiburon is in the Bay Area. So, so the words on the front, I'm going to read them, but that's the mask. It says, humor, kindness, and honesty. That's the front. And on the back, it says struggle, challenge, and anger. That's the mask. This one, the person didn't even tell what city they're in. They didn't tell what their age is, so we don't know, but this is the mask they drew. And on the front, it says smiley, goofy, laid back, and chill. That's the front. And the back says quiet, shy, crazy, sheltered. And then it says parents, myself, and family. So they don't talk about it. And over again. And I'll show you one of the ones from the original type of mask. And I'll show you this last one here. Because this one is one that it will be in the book. So I'm at the workshop. This is one of the, this is a paper mask. This is actually, it's done with paper, and you can see it's wrinkly. It's all wrinkly because it was balled up. But look at the front. This is the mask, and then let's read the words on the front. It says happy and smart and outgoing and caring. Yeah, see that?
Yep.
And you probably noticed some words that were bleeding from the other side because they're using big markers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is the word on the back.
Wow.
18 times. Like anger, just 18 times written. When I saw this mask, I was just like, wow. I've looked at this mask 100 times at least in my hands. And just knowing that, where do you go? Where do you go to talk about all the stuff that's inside? Or do you just let it boil up and bottle up and stuff it? I mean, as a teacher, I saw it. As an administrator, I saw it. As now on the outside of schools, working in schools, I see it. I see it in the data of our prison system here in the U.S. 94% of people in prison are men. 94%. I mean, statistically, it just says something's wrong with men. I don't think that something's wrong with men. I think that men have been taught to only show half of their, or less than half of their emotional expansiveness.
Yeah.
And therefore, what do? Those emotions are coming out. I mean, professionals say that it's energy in motion. Emotions are energy in motion. Where's the energy going to go? It has to go somewhere. It doesn't disappear.
Yep.
It has to go somewhere. So you're going to stuff it. Okay. Where's it going to go? It's going to go into your eating habits. It's going to go into your substance control. It's going to go into your heart, your liver, your body parts. It's going to go into your blood system. It's going to go into your brain, your heart, your lip. Like where is it going to go? It's going to go somewhere. And maybe you can store it for many, many years. Maybe you can even stick it to your deathbed with you. But what do we hear people say all the time? I wish I had spent more time talking about. I hear men all the time, and not only men, but people say, my father, when he was about to go, he said, I wish I had. And I think that our job is, my job. This is where I work, but this is why my calling is to give all people, the space to be more of their full self while we're here. Not on our way out the door, not while we're taking our last breaths, but to more expand our ability to be human and enjoy this human experience more fully. That's what I want. That's what I'm hoping for. So every time I touch a mask, I see a mask, and those masks that showed up to you today in the package, I am just inspired. And, maybe, I don't know when we'll get to 1 million. I could care less about that. But I think that every student who makes one and who's willing to share their 3 words on the front and back, they hopefully become more alive and more recognizing that they're not the only ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, 18 times just seeing that, it's really powerful. But like you're saying, I think just doing it once, starts that whole connection through your body and mind. Like, damn, this is what I've been feeling. Like, this is what's going on for me. This is a part of who I am. And I'm really hopeful that can really start to be something that they turn to and realize more and more so, why am I acting this way? Maybe I have a mask on. What's going on underneath? This works amazing. And it's so cool to see, so cool to hear about.
I think you probably have a pretty unique perspective too, being all the different ways you're involved with youth. So I'm curious to get your perspective on what you think maybe some of the primary issues. Do you think this is, and I'm sure these are vast in the number of issues that we could identify, but where would you say that maybe some of the focus, or maybe some of the work you guys do with Ever Forward, is trying to help young people out of these places that they find themselves in, where their emotions are kind of undefined and bottled and needing a place to express them? And how do you guys go about that?
It starts with our first workshop. When we do a workshop with a group of students, is to make a mask. Our first activity is the mask. Like when we come in, whether we're doing a club or whether we're just doing a workshop, even when I work with teachers, I expect teachers to make their mask first. I expect that. I used to suggest it lightly. Now I say, if I'm going to come and do a workshop for students, it's really important that your teachers make a mask. Because what ends up happening is that if the adults are just requiring you to do this thing and they haven't yet experienced it themselves, they'll downplay how difficult it is. Hey, hurry up, and finish your mask. This is not an easy thing to do. I mean, it's simple. The task is simple. It's 1 picture plus 6 words. That's pretty simple to do. But the picture and the words are really deeply reflective, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I've seen, or what I feel about it, is that what it allows people to do when they get a chance to do that reflection is they get to say, oh, wait a minute, there is more. Now, let's say I'm making it by myself. Let's say somebody went to our website, they went and made a mask, because everyone can make masks online now. And during the pandemic, we were making lots of masks online. But when they get the chance to say, what am I showing on the outside? And they write those words, and they show it on the inside, and blah, 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 show those words. It's absolutely mind-blowing sometimes when I'll see a single mask, maybe. Sometimes you'll see masks coming in groups because there'll be somebody doing it with a group of people. But sometimes every once in a while, one mask will be in that deck, right? I just think that as we get more aware and more clear about who we are, we can maybe ask our friends and people who we care about, is there more that I'm not, is there something that I'm missing? Right? We don't tell people they shouldn't have masks. That is not the goal of this campaign, to say you should not have masks. It's not. My goal in this work is to say, do you have a place in your life where you can take off the mask? You have a safe place, or a friend. You have at least one friend who could. And I'll tell a lot of students when I go to these schools, I'm like, maybe that your friend group, you selected them because it's easy, but maybe you don't have to go deep. But the question is, do you want to? There's probably somebody who's willing to be your friend and will accept you, because maybe you're not even willing to tell your current friend group who you really are, because you're afraid they're going to walk away. I had one young man in a workshop say, I don't tell my friends what I'm going through because they'll stop inviting me to stuff. Like in this friend group, we don't talk about real stuff. We just talk about sports, cars, girls, money, blah, 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 whatever, fun stuff. So I know that if I bring up real stuff, I'm going to stop getting invited. He knows this. I said, but aren't those your friends? He's like, yeah, but that's just the way it is. And so I say to them, I said, well, maybe there's somebody who's actually trying to be your friend who could hear whatever you're going through, and they'll still be there. Keep your eyes open, because maybe the people you're with are just the people who you crafted, who can fit, who can handle your mask. Right? Like the part of being fully. Ask me the question again, because I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you're answering it. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to get a good feel for some of the, to go back to your engineering days, some of the root causes of why we find young people in the place that they're in.
Yeah.
And then the follow up to that would be, aside from the work that you're doing, other people, because while this is a very youth focused issue, I think, and it runs rampant through schools, and this is just like a huge issue.
Yeah.
I think it's a person issue too, right? Like it's everybody. So I think there's a lot of anecdote and lessons to be learned for anybody who finds himself listening to this, finds himself watching your TED Talks, or, on your website, or talking to somebody who's going to a group, whatever it may be. I think everybody can take a positive note about how maybe they can operate in their life and find a place to take off their mask. So I guess I'm just trying to tease out some of those ideas that you've got going through.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. And one of the things we do, and when we do the mask first, is from the mask, it builds on to deeper understanding of self, right? Who am I? And then who are we? Right. Like, so now I've shared my mask anonymously, and then we try and go deeper. We're trying to say, so who's willing to talk about their mask today? Right. We started going deeper, right? The check-ins become, once we can create a space. Now, ideally, if we're doing an assembly, our work with the school is to get everybody clear on this common language around these masks. Then as the school decides, well, we want to do breakout groups like this or breakout groups like that, then we can go deeper, right? So if they're in a club, they're going to be doing this every week. So we're not in a hurry to but we don't wait. We don't let's wait 10 weeks and then we'll make a mask. I'm like, no, we're making the mask first week. Because I don't have time to waste. I don't have time to waste with hopefully losing your energy by having you come to some fake thing. And I'm trying to put some things, like the mask is first. It's 1 picture, 6 words. It's not easy. It's not meant to be easy, but it's simple. So do the best you can with what you can do, and then learn what you can learn from what you see. And every student who's come to those workshops, when I say who have given reflections, they recognize, I already knew that, some would say. But most of them say, I couldn't believe that people were going through the same stuff I was going through. I couldn't believe that people in this I've been going to school since I was in the kindergarten. I didn't know people in here were going through this stuff, right? We don't talk about this stuff. We never had a workshop like this. What we do in that space is they get to recognize that it's not just them. And that is how it builds the community to be able to go deeper. So when we're in a space, a workshop or a club or even a deeper space, so let's do check-ins. And maybe today's check-in, we're going to do a rose and a thorn. What's something's going really good in your life? What's something that's challenging? Today, we're going to check in about what is something that you're trying, that you need to be doing, but you're not doing. Okay. And we just go over these questions that we just use over the years to help people go a little deeper. And they always know that when they check in on a scale from 1 to 10, if they check in below a 7, for example, that's a sign I need some help. I need to talk. They don't have to come to the circle and say I need to talk, because trying to get young men to be like, I need to talk about my feelings today. Like, that's really hard to do, right? But if they come in and say, man, I'm a 5, man. I'm 5. And then it may come out as anger, but it's a sign to everyone else that person needs the circle today. And it's a way for them to not have to be feeling like they're less than who they really identify as being because they're asking for help. But they know that there's a sign of how you do it with us, right? And we got you. And so it's creating the space so that you can know that you're not alone. And that not only that you're not alone, I think a lot of the cliches have some truth in them, right? Like, you're not alone. Like, if you're going through something, but if you're stuck in this thing, I love my phone, by the way, but I'm going to talk about phones. If you're stuck in this thing, you get sucked into the highlight reels.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you compare the highlight reel of everybody else's life to the behind the scenes story of your life, and they're most times going to feel disconnected. And so what we tell young people is, don't compare the highlight reel to your behind the scenes story. So know that you're not alone, because you're not. Just because people got better masks or they got good masks, it's a different story, right? And so that's how we do it in the work. And in the consistency, it's more just a consistency.
I was going to ask about the consistency too, because especially with going back to that piece of identity, one of the things I was thinking about recently, and I was kind of telling this to Nick, was that there's this idea, I guess, that and I took a note here because I'm losing my train of thought as I'm saying it. Yeah, but yeah, like with consistency, the reinforcing of feeling validated, right? And like showing people that it's really not alone, and then reforming this into the identity. It really helps somebody establish a narrative within themselves of the language. I really like the way I heard it was getting yourself to a place where you can say about yourself, I'm the type of person who shares what's on the inside of my mask. And that becomes part of your identity the more repetition you get behind it. And by doing that, you're really like getting comfortable with how uncomfortable that situation is. And I think, to only further validate the mission of Ever Forward, like that's where the money's at, right? Like, when you can get people to a place where they are out in a foreign place, but they still feel like they can embrace that, those negative aspects they may perceive about themselves or whatever that is, that's when you've really gotten to somebody, and that's when you get habits built that are starting to build. And that's, super powerful in reshaping young people like that who don't get that. Like you're saying, a highlight reel, when you're looking at, Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and all you see is people's good stuff. I mean, that's probably pushing you. That's the opposite of what you guys are doing, right? Like that's telling you like, man, good thing I've got this mask on. Cause if I didn't, everybody would know that I'm not this.
Yeah.
And it's like the social media is just a monster at making people feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. My mentor says comparison is a thief of all happiness.
Yeah.
And when we come to those circles with young men, we say, hey, how are you doing today? Right. And somebody will check in at a lower number. Somebody will check in having a fantastic day. Hey, yes, all of it is real at the same time. Mm-hmm. He's having a great day. You're having a rough day. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with his having a good day. Like, it just means that today, this is where my experience is. And I get this place to go and people can see me. Right. And I feel like I have to like pretend I'm having a good day because everyone else is having a good day. No, I'm not. Like, and that's the space. But where do you do that? Like when I talk to a lot of young people, they don't have a place to do that.
Yeah.
So they always have to adjust their emotions to how people in their circle is. And since most people don't ever talk about feelings or emotions, they must always have it up together. And what are you doing? You're not. And so what we help them recognize is the more that you can find people around you who not only give you space to be multifaceted and multi-dimensional, right? If you're supposed to talk about, I've found it in my life because I also know that as I got more clear that I'm willing to have more conversation than just about sports, I think because I'm 300 pounds, I'm 6'1", I'm a big dude. Like, and people, I tell them from Oakland, they always want to talk about the Raiders, right? They're like, "Oh, you're a Raiders fan?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, not so much," right? "Oh man, you gonna watch the playoffs this week?" I'm like, "Nah, not really," right? Now, in the old days, I'll play along, right? Yeah, I may take it out, I may get ready for a super, I could care less about any game whatsoever. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I remember being on a plane once, and this guy was like I told him I don't watch football. Like he's over there. There's a seat in between us. He's like, "Hey, so where are you from?" I said, "I'm heading back home, Oakland." "Oh, you must like the Raiders." "No, I don't like the Raiders." "Oh no, you like the Niners?" I said, "No, I don't really watch football." He was already starting to. I could feel the judgment happening, the judgment happening, right? And I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be good, right? This is gonna end because I'm not gonna have a 5-hour conversation about something I could care less about. Not anymore. I've done plenty of hours of conversation about stuff I could actually care less about because I was not willing to tell a person that I don't really care about talking about sports, right? That's my truth.
Yeah,
and I don't need to justify my masculinity by having names memorized and quotes and number of touchdowns and stats, and I have no interest. And so I said, well, actually, I do a lot of work around emotions. I talk about emotions a lot. I can already feel the conversation getting ready to end, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about, and for me, it was like, I could talk for hours about emotions and well-being and hiding out and all that. But to try and pretend to have a long conversation about, it's not going to happen. Now, the reason I can talk about that and funny and jest is because it happens a lot. It happens with young men. I was on the BART, our metro system. A young man, he's like 6'8". He gets on the BART and the guy comes in and is like, "Oh my God, young brother, you so tall. Do you play basketball?" The young kid said, "No." And the man, you could just hear the judgment. "You don't play basketball? What you mean you don't play?" Now he's real thin, so he's not like stocky like a football player. He's like a lean, like he's like, "What you mean you don't play basketball?" And I just really was like, should I jump in? It's not my business. It's not my business. But I was so feeling for that kid. You could tell that kid. He was like, when he said no, he thought the conversation would shift somewhere else. And that dude was like berating him for like 12 minutes. And I just kept looking at my clock and like, "Shanti, say something, say something, say something." And I was like, I felt bad that I didn't. I felt there's a dance I play between minding my own business and getting involved. But that young man, maybe he's a computer programmer. Maybe he's something else. But all this man wanted to talk about was why he doesn't play basketball. "Dude, young brother, you could make a whole lot of money if you like." And I was just like, but now I'm not saying anything wrong with what the man was saying. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, why aren't there more ways of us acknowledging each other's presence than by putting each other into boxes, right? Which is why we believe that we could tell people what they should be able to wear and how they should dress. And I mean, we have a society that now believes that we have the right to tell people how they should be because we believe it. And I think we've gotten with the way social media works and the way we don't have to listen to an idea that's different than our own. So what we listen to, we're going to get more of, and what we watch, we're going to see more of. And so I think our brains are sometimes, I'm wondering what's going to do to our brains in the future. Like if we're not willing to hear somebody's opinion that's different than our own. Right. So anytime a man tells you he doesn't watch football and you assume that he's not a real man. What? Where'd that come from? Why is that even a thing? Why does it even seem to be a thing? Right. And I think that is programming. It's early programming. And as a society, we have work to do if we're going to make a society where everyone feels the opportunity to be themselves,
Yeah. I mean, your BART story really hit home for me. I'm 6'5" and I get the basketball thing too.
Yeah.
So, but I was a volleyball player.
Okay.
So everybody was like, first thing, "Oh man, like you must be a basketball player, huh?" And I'm like, "I play volleyball, don't play basketball." But yeah, it's so true. Like that, like people just assume that and I mean, to a certain degree, it's fair, right? Like I did play basketball. I was tall. Like that was an asset. It's a logical mental conclusion to come to. But yeah, when somebody's just like not letting it go and like wants to like you said, berate somebody for for not doing something. It really, when I hear those questions, or when I hear like you're on a plane and somebody is like, oh, wow, you don't like football. The first thing I'm thinking of is like, man, this person's really like in this bubble of what he thinks like he's supposed to be. And I'm curious if this guy gets to step out of that ever. It's fine to love all that stuff that's like traditionally masculine. I like a lot of it myself, but like you gotta follow your own heart and intuition and curiosities and other stuff that may seem out of the ordinary. You have to. It's like, otherwise, why would you have gotten into teaching? Like you just had this different drive in you, and so you followed it.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
Yeah. It's like we put on these masks, and then when people take off their mask, we're like, "Whoa, put that thing back on!" like what are you doing? Like, I'm not ready for that. You're supposed to wear this mask with me.
Yeah.
Wrong room.
Yeah.
That's the wrong room. I think you're in the wrong row. I think you're 2 rows out.
Yeah.
I think you're here for the 8:00 meeting. I think you're early.
That's right. And it's almost like if you're willing to do, I know I've done it. I've done it with the intent of like just going and getting along. But what happens when I think the question is, when you're okay with it, you're okay with it. And when you're not, can you own the fact that you're not okay with it, right? And I think that what I see from a lot of people, and sometimes definitely a lot of young people, it happens, I think maybe with the best intentions. It's a conversation starter. Hey.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then what happens is when that part of the conversation is drops, then they're like, their level of what they can say next is limited if you are only one dimensional in that way, right? So then it's like, oh, well, I can't talk to them about that. Then what are we going to talk about? What else do people talk about, right? And I think those are the ways of having deeper ways of being. And I think that I've fallen into the trap many times. I've even fallen into the trap of asking a youngster like about what they play. And I'm like, why are you doing that, Ashanti? And I'm like, because it's a habit. It comes out of a habitual, like natural way of thinking. And then I'm like, oh, you know what, man? And now if I catch myself, when I'm smart enough to catch myself, I'm more better at it now. But I used to do that all the time, right? That will be the natural conclusion of the thought. And then I'm like, right on. So what are you into? What do you do? If I'm having a conversation, if I'm having a random conversation, I'm like, what school do you go to? Like, whatever. What are your thoughts? Like, what are you in? Like, I think that giving that room for expansiveness, right? And I think that's something that our communities, our society, we need. I need. And I'm glad that I'm on a men's team, right? So that has helped me a lot. That helped me. I was on a men's team after I started Ever Forward. I think what I was building Ever Forward is what I actually needed when I was in high school. And it wasn't until I joined my men's team in 2010 that I was like, I walked into Roberts Park in the Bay Area, is a park in the Bay Area in the Redwoods. I walk in the park, is like 50 men in a circle. I'm like, okay, where they bring me? Where the heck is going on here? Right? I had never seen anything like that. I never seen that many men together, and it wasn't a sporting event, and there's no sports happening. There's like, okay, what's happening up here, right? And just to see men support each other's, to like take off their mask and get real and get human, my mind was blown. I'm like, where's this been all my life? No one ever invited me to a men's group all my life. It wasn't until I was there, and I was in my 30s, I think. Well, yeah, I was in my 30s. Like, how did that never happen? Well, because growing up as a young man, you're taught you're not supposed to want to hang around with a bunch of men. You're not supposed to want to do that. I mean, that's for sports, yeah, but that not hanging around, not hanging out. Like that's where I grew up in Oakland. That's just not seen as cool to do. Like, what? So I have young men when they come to our club and they say, who's in there? Right, that kind of thing. And they'll come in, they're like, right, especially the super needing to prove they're masculine young men. They'd be like, oh, there ain't no girls in here? Like that's their way, that's their own stuff, right? It ain't nothing. I'm like, I didn't invite you to come to a room with a bunch of girls. I said, you want to come have lunch with us? Right? And they walk in and now they got to put their guard up, right? Because they got to, all these things are happening. All these what do we call it? Synapses are firing in the brain. Like, yeah. What is this space? What's going on? Oh my goodness. I've never seen nothing like this before. No one's fighting. They're not arguing. They're not yelling at each other. No one's punching each other. Like it's like, and it could do something to your dissonance about like what's going on in here. And for some, they realize this is amazing, and some are like, yeah, that was kind of strange, right? Like, you know. And I think it's not for everybody, but those who can benefit from it can find something really amazing. And I think in the old days, you know, thousands of years ago, the communities were like that, right? The men hung out, you know, where they hung out. The rest of the people, the kids hung out with the other people in the other part of the village. Like there were certain structures that I don't, you know, if you just do some history about the way communities, cultures, and civilizations came together, and then, you know, and the men didn't do a whole lot of talking. They just, you know, sat around the fire, right? And I'm generalizing what I've learned and what I've researched, but there's so many different types, right? When you go out to hunt, you're not chit-chatting. You ain't chit-chatting. You
singular focus. You're got a goal as a group to provide for everybody else. Mm-hmm. You're vulnerable because, you know, you're not just the hunter, you're the hunted at some points, you know, depending on where you're at. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, like it's so interesting to think about how like the groups that you're expressing, like being a part of and the value of them really was probably like ingrained in society for a long time. And then just somewhere along the way, we lost touch with it, you know, growing up with tribes, I think, you know, for a long time, I'm sure there was some similar purpose in religion. And, you know, obviously today religion doesn't hold the same societal esteem as it once did, but, you know, just like those common groups are so valuable for people to have, you know, common understanding, common, you know, just being in a space with mutual respect and appreciation for somebody and just letting them be who they're going to be and like knowing that you're not going to judge them. Like, man, it's so odd. And I'm curious too, because there's a really interesting paper. I don't know if you've ever come across it. It's the Harvard Divinity School did it. And it's just a short like analysis. Basically, it's called How We Gather. And they basically using the thesis of people today don't look for, they express being a highly spiritual being, but they do not seek out religious groups as their way of expressing that spirituality. So they went out to analyze where are people finding community like what may have been church in the past. And they just found a bunch of these active groups, but I'm curious. And some of the attributes are what you're talking about too, is like, you know, a mutual sense of positive accountability. Everybody wants everybody to get better. And it's just so interesting to see where some of these groups, a lot of them are like fitness classes, cooking groups. There is a little bit of religious in there, because that's still obviously a big piece to that part of those types of social groups. But yeah, it's just so interesting where we miss this so much today, you know, and it's like, it's very, like, there's clearly something going on in society where we're missing the mark, you know, again, looking at schools and young men and young women and just how depression and anxiety and, you know, suicide rates are like on the rise. It's like tragically, and the age is getting younger and younger at when kids are starting to face these issues. And it's these types of experiences for people. It's a human thing that we need. These types of experiences are just so lacking. So yeah, I mean, I hope we get you to the, you know, 25 states, whatever, what you said your original goals were for forever or ever forward. I think, you know, we got to get you there, because these are the types of things that people need, like picking that word very intentionally, is they need it.
Yeah.
So
we just created a game. Let me, okay.
Oh yeah.
It's called the Adventure. I guess people don't get up usually. I'm gonna get up. Okay, this is gonna be a new thing.
Yeah, we want to see it.
And the reason I think that what you said is like, how can we support people? We create this game. So it's called the Adventure. The Adventure, Ever Forward Club. That way, Ever Forward Club, and it's a card game. And maybe we'll do one. I mean, we'll do it live, right? Like this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we'll just answer one question. So this is how the card game looks. There's 3 types of cards. There's the destination cards. Boom, there's one of those. There's the challenge cards. These are where all the questions are. The challenge cards, and then there's the character cards. And so the goal, we created this adventure that was built into these questions, and the questions is like really, really deep, right? And some of them are light, some of them are deep. You never know because they're mixed in. But if I had a gameplay space, I'm gonna fan them out, and then I'm gonna let one of you pick a card, and then maybe we'll all answer the question, right? So there's kind of this idea of like, how can we? So let me see. There's the fan. And we got to pick one of the black ones. So I'm going to just my hand's going to run across the top. And when you say stop, I'm just going to grab one of the cards. Okay, right there. I see that one right there. Yeah. Come on. Okay.
There we go.
So 2 of them are here. 2 of them on my hanger. Pick up 2 of them. So I'm going to just randomly. So I haven't seen them yet. There's the left and the right. This one and that one.
Let's go with the right.
My right, your right. My right.
So your left. I'm sorry. Your left.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this is a sunset. This is a sunset. This is a sunset or a sunrise. So it's basically starting and stopping.
Ooh. Oh man. That's a question right there. So if anybody's only listening to this, this is obviously on YouTube. Name a relationship that needs to end.
Okay, let's get the other one too, just in case.
Okay.
Because this is even hard.
We're not trying to air out. We're not trying to air out anybody's dirty laundry. I haven't even done a mask yet.
Yeah, that's the mask. That's the mask, right? And this one is a hard one too. This one is lessons learned. This one's lessons learned.
Something that you could do to improve your life. What's stopping you? That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Are they open for interpretation?
There are. I mean, what you get to do is you get to decide whether you want to go 1 point or 3 point. 1 point says, I'm gonna just answer really lightweight. I don't want to go deep. 3 is I'm gonna go a solid, real deep answer. And that's how the 1 and 3 are. That's the only thing there is. You can interpret it however you want. Because we don't, our goal is not to gotcha. The goal is it's a way for people to come together to understand each other a little bit more. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that wherever you take the answer is beautiful in that way, Mm-hmm. But that's the way the game works. And so it's almost like
with the relationship that needs to end one, social media and I have a relationship that is probably not healthy. So that's where my mind went. Maybe that would be the 1 pointer.
No. Actually, come on now. And that's what we tell people. Your points are your points. Like if that's a real statement for you and you didn't just blow it off, then I think it's a 3.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I think most people wouldn't want to talk about their ending the relationship with social media because social media is so powerful and it's such a part of them, right?
Yeah. They're
striving for more followers, more likes, more clicks, more engagement, right? I think those are such a powerful thing, right? And I like that. I mean, I hadn't thought of that one. I was trying to think of okay, how do I answer this question? Because I think I think that my relationship is that needs to end, and I've been working on it. Is my addiction to my food. Like food, I have food addiction. Like sugar is my trigger. Mm-hmm. Like I don't like candy, but I'm talking about anything with flour and sugar mixed together.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, the aisles are long. I have to avoid those aisles in the store. Like cakes, pies, cookies, donuts, pastries, all of the above. And I've had a relationship with it for a long time, and it's hard to let go. Right? It's hard because it feels comforting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes me feel good.
Yeah. Well, to give because we did a pretty interesting episode too with a nutrition scientist, and one thing to help you feel, I don't know what the right wording I want to use is, but don't be so hard on yourself with this one, because obviously it's there's food scientists out there designing foods for the pure intention of getting people to enjoy them and want to eat them. So, I mean, we're hacking this thing, you know what I mean? So it's not nothing you've done, no fault of yours. But yeah, it's tough to navigate, man. I mean, I'll see myself sitting down and I'll have a whole roll of Oreos just because I'm feeling it, you know?
They're nice.
So,
They're nice.
But that's how those things were designed. So I'm a big no shame on the food thing. I think that's a tricky one, man.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah. You kind of answered my question in different ways, but I did want to ask too, like throughout this journey, throughout this progression of Ever Forward, your teaching career, different things that you've gotten involved in, is there anything else that sticks out about things that maybe you learned that were caught you by surprise or were unexpected?
Yeah. There's lots of them. I would say one in particular is like the fact that Ever Forward is not where I would want it to be at this present moment, like where I would think it should be by now. The fact that I'm still here, right? I think I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I believe I was raised in the church, and I've told I've been like, take this thing from me. Let me go and get a job where I can make a big check. I can be working in education. I can do stuff I love. Like, let me just go do that. And I think a couple of times, I think something that surprised me is that I've had opportunities to take a job where I can make 3 times more than I'm making right now. And I've started filling out the application, name, blah, blah, blah. Okay, resume, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, am I really going to quit? Like we're so close. Like, I feel like we're so close. Like, I feel like I'm far from where I really want to be, but like, am I really, could I go and do that? Could I go and take this job and somebody says, wait, we're not going to do that now. Like, we're not going to try that. We're not going to do this. Like, I think the surprise has been the opportunity has come to like level up my financial well-being in the work that I feel good about. And I think I'm just on a mission to really be able to have a lot more freedom to create and not feel stuck, Like, I never wanted to start a nonprofit, but if somebody would have come to me when I was ready to do Ever Forward full time and say, look, I want to hire for your job where you get to create mentoring programs, you get to help expand them around the country, I would take the job. I would have never experienced what it felt like to be in this kind of work. I think even deeper, I would have felt like this is hard work. Like, this is hard work. Like, we're trying to hire right now. Like, we're like, so many things are like moving and spinning. We had a big fundraiser this past weekend. I set a goal to raise $50,000. That was the goal. We raised $5,000. What is happening? Like, so part of you just wants to be like, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing this? Should I be doing something else? Should I? And I think it's a question. I think I'm clear every day I get up that this is the work that I was born to do. Like, the stories that I got to tell you all here today, like, they were all stories that have added, like, oh yeah, that's connected to that, and that's connected to that. So I'm getting smarter. Like, I didn't start this with a business plan or a board from fancy university. I started with some friends who would say, I'll be on your board. I started with a big dream. And so I think the surprise is that how 17 years, like I've been at this. And I'll say another surprise that I'm starting to acknowledge or accept is that I want more. Like, I want to live a better lifestyle. I want to have a retirement plan. Like, I want to, like, I'm starting to recognize that now. I think I needed to have experiences on 2 different sides. When I was first working for just for me. Then I went to working 2002, coming back to school, working for my community education, young people, the community teachers, like giving back to my community. And now I'm moving towards where I can do both, where I think after 17 years, I've learned a lot. I have a lot to say about this work and education and emotions and well-being and healthy masculinity. I have a lot to say. And now I think I'm finally giving myself permission that I have the right to ask for when somebody wants me to come speak. I have the right to earn what I think I should earn, right? I have the right to ask for, like, it's still hard to say it because sometimes I feel awkward because I'm not in it for the money, but I'm also realizing that, like, one of my buddies calls me Giveaway Gary. He's like, you just being Giveaway Gary. He's like, you got to tell Giveaway Gary he got to take a break because you can't keep living. You can't have a retirement plan. If every time somebody offers you an opportunity to speak and you do it for free, yeah, great. But it's not going to help you in the other part of the life you want to live. And I'm like, you're right. And I think those are the surprising parts, right? Where I've gotten to a place where I can accept that I have a right to want more. Like purpose, I can't want more in purpose and passion wise. I'm working that's at its peak, but financial well-being and longevity and that I have not given a lot of attention, and now it's time. And so, yeah, it surprises me sometimes when I say no. I have a hard time saying no. You know, I'm not in this for. When I say I'm not in this for money, anyone who knows me knows it's true. But I'm also clear that, you know, when it's all said and done, if I'm 70, 80 years old and I have no retirement, what am I going to do? That's going to be bad news, right? So I think it's just like waking up and being more giving to my own self, you know? Yeah. Yeah. So it's still a learning process, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and the work that you do and the work that you continue to do. Yeah, this conversation's been refreshing for me. So, like, I feel pretty motivated.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Right on. Well, good luck with all the projects you're doing. And, you know, if anybody, I don't know how you do this, but if anyone out there wants to make a mask, they can go to 100kmasks.com and they can make a mask digitally. It's anonymous. And if this work you want to use with your students, it's free to use. We give that away to the world to use. And so, you know, if you want to use it with your kids, your family, your coaching, your whatever, like, we created that part as a tool to offer to others. And so please share that with the world if you can. And, you know, thank you for inviting me on this journey to share what we're trying to do in the world. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.